Christine hear me still? Yeah. Okay, we're
Yep.
gonna get started soon, Christine. We're in the. We're gonna play a little intro thing. How are you doing? Can you hear me
Good.
okay?
Yep.
Cool. Welcome. So this is in conversation with Christine Miskonoodinkwe Smith. Uh, thank you for everyone for coming. To the people who are joining us virtually. Um, see. So first, I'd like just to welcome the audience and welcome you to the festival. And remember that you can support the festival online by becoming a member through the silent auction program at wordvancouver.com. And I guess we can start with maybe I'll introduce myself and then I'll introduce you, Christine.
Okay.
So I'm a writer and artist and editor and filmmaker, and I write horror, urban fantasy. I've also written poetry, nonfiction, and um, yeah, and I'm a member of the Lac First Nation in Northern Ontario, and my dad's a Polish Jew from Poland, but he grew up in Canada mostly. And all right. But before we get to the rest of the event, I guess I want to start with doing a land acknowledgement. This festival takes place on the unceded homelands of the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and people of this territory. Um, so, um, Christine, can you hear me? Okay, just
Yep.
checking. Yeah, cool. Um, so I'd also like to say thank you to our sponsors, Pace Accounting, for sponsoring this event, and UBC, UBC Library, UBC Robin Square, um, as well as the festival donors and sponsors, Canada Arts Council, Canada Heritage Fund, BC Gaming, Creative BC, the City of Vancouver, DBVIA, the Hamber Foundation, Joseph Wosk Foundation, the Asian Canadian Writers Workshop, CWIL, Pace and Associates, Federation of BC Writers, League of Canadian Poets, Writers Union of Canada. There's even more sponsors, so you can check the website. Without them, this festival could not happen. If you haven't already considered making a donation via the website, all right. Now on to introductions. Christine Miskonoodinkwe Smith is a Saulteaux woman from Peguis First Nation and author of These Are the Stories, Memories of a 60s Scoop Survivor, published by Kegedonce Press. And in December of 2021, she's also the editor of Silence to Strength, an anthology envisioned for giving a platform to other 60s Scoop survivors, which was also published by Kegedonce in October of 2022. She's an author, editor, writer, and journalist who graduated from the University of Toronto with a specialization in Aboriginal Studies in June 2011, and went on to receive her master's in education and social justice in June 2017. Her first nonfiction story, Choosing the Path to Healing, appeared in 2006. Then the anthology Growing Up Girl, an anthology of voices from marginalized spaces. She has written for the Native Canadian Anishinabek News, Windspeaker, First Nation House Magazine, New Tribe Magazine, Muskrat Magazine, the Piker Press. She is also the co-editor of the anthology Bawaajigan that me and Christine co-edited together. And she resides in Toronto, Ontario, and is currently working on a YA novel. and thinking of her next project. So a long record of publishing, which is why I wanted to have this in conversation style chat with you, Christine, for a few reasons. I think you're really getting some important stories out there that the world needs to hear. You're helping others tell their stories, and you're getting your own stories out there as well. And I felt that, given your record of publication over your writing career, you've reached the point where you kind of um, have that status where you can have your own in conversation style event. Uh, so, welcome, Christine.
Thank you.
Um, so I thought we'd start just by asking for a little reading from you. If you want to do a 2 3 minute short reading, just give us a taste of your writing and your speaking voice.
Okay. This is from my memoir. These are the stories. I believe I was about 9 or 10 years old at the time of my great escape. I had been thinking about running away for a few days. After I woke up once again, staring at the four dull, light brown walls around me, I knew I had to go. I was tired of my situation. My bedroom consisted of a wooden bunk bed, a dresser, and a desk and chair that faced a window. Sunlight might have poured in, but my curtains were often drawn. My bedroom served as my prison. It had bolts on the door. There was an alarm that would go off shrilly if I had even touched the doorknob. There was no jumping out of my bed or feeling any excitement at the new day ahead, because to make any noise meant punishment. Punishment came in the form of a few good swats on my behind with a fly swatter, or a strike across the face with an open palm that made me cringe inside and want to cry. Crying was not allowed because my adoptive parents were quick to anger. Though I never knew what punishment may come, the worst was always being locked up, and sometimes one of them coming into my room sent my heart into my throat. I always felt like a mere glance would make them go off. Crying was best done in private when I thought there was no one around to hear me. As soon as I heard footsteps outside my bedroom door, my little body would tense up and my heart would speed up. I never knew what would greet me, a sarcastic smile or a withering glare, for some imagined sin that would make me the target of another torrent of angry words or a beating. That day I was tired, tired of being held hostage. I wanted to be free, but first I was served breakfast. I remember clearly the sound of the bolts on my door being undone, the sharp ping as the alarm was shut off. The door opened, and there was my adopted father with the tray in his hand. My breakfast lay upon it. Breakfast for me consisted of two slices of white bread, with peanut butter and jelly spread thinly upon them, cut into four little perfect squares. The tray was put down onto my desk. I was told to eat, and my adoptive father exited. I did not leave the edge of my bed until he had left the room, and I heard the locks going back into place and the alarm being turned on. I ran over to my desk as soon as I heard my father's footsteps disappear down the hall. I looked at my food, sat at my desk, and hungrily gulped the sandwich down. My stomach grumbled, but not in hunger. It grumbled with anxiety and a fear that my 9 or 10-year-old mind could not figure out. As I ate, I was careful to not make a mess of any kind. I was trained and trained well. I learned to be as quiet as possible, to not make any messes, and to only do what I had to do when I was given the okay, just like a puppy obeying his master. I recall eating my sandwich, rearranging everything on my tray, making sure that everything was lined up perfectly, getting up from my desk and tiptoeing to my bedroom door to knock and anyone know I had to go to the washroom. The bathroom was across the hall from my bedroom. It felt like an eternity before my door was finally opened and I was marched across the hall to do my deed, and then marched back to my room. The door would be closed and locked behind me once more.
Thanks for that reading, Christine. You're really dealing with some like difficult memories in your memoir, which brings me to one of the questions I had for you is how difficult it must have been for you to be open and honest about your life history in your memoir and some of and those really tough times that you've been through and and as well as your struggles with mental health that you talk about in your memoir. So I wanted to ask you a little about your decision to share your story, um, and because it is so personal and difficult. Did you have any hesitations about telling this story?
At first, I had a lot of hesitation because I wasn't sure um, how it would be uh, perceived, and I also didn't want to write about. I was careful. I mean, about leaving names out, certain names out, as certain situations. I wrote what I could that I thought was the safest. Um, but there was a lot more that I could have written about. I didn't. Um, yeah, there was hesitation, and then even when I was asked for pictures to go into my memoir, I was a bit hesitant to do that. But then I finally just said, "Okay, I'll do it." And the reason I wanted to do my memoir, it was also because it's part of my healing journey, getting those stories out so that they're not eating me up inside.
So the changing names was to protect your family members or to protect you, and what
Both.
was the hesitation around? Oh, and what was the hesitation around sharing the photos of yourself as a younger as a child? What was the hesitation around some sharing some of the family photos?
Because of legalities around um, the pictures um, that I like. There were photos that I couldn't include because of the legalities around it, as far as my adoptive family. But the pictures that I did include, I made sure that I asked before I submitted it for with my memoir.
Who did you ask?
I asked my niece and I asked my sisters, and I asked and then there was other ones that I just put in on my own. So
Just the pictures of your relatives. You want to make sure it was okay with them to publish their images, I guess. Um, and you were always also worried about how your foster family and your step how they would take the publication, right?
well, yeah, but initially I was, but then I was just like, they haven't. I haven't been in touch with them. I haven't been in touch with them for years, so I was just like, you know what, I'll do it.
Um, did you get any negative kind of reaction from them? Did you ever hear anything from that adoptive family
Now,
after they read it? Do you know if they read it?
my sister and my niece probably read it, and so did my niece's father. But I don't know if my adoptive family has read it, and they they like I said, I've been gone from them since I was 10 years old, and uh, I'm not a part of their lives at all. So
Okay, thanks for that. You've been a writer for as long as I've known you. Do you remember the first thing you wrote or the moment you decided that you wanted to be a writer, and what made you want to be a storyteller?
I knew as soon as I was like in grade 3 that I wanted to be a writer, and I was always told that, oh, you'll never make enough money to be a writer. Um, and I guess you could say I went against what I was told, and um, just pursued my writing besides my day job. Um, I I wrote a story in grade 3. It was like about something about the olden days, but I included something about a bicycle. I don't know why, but my teacher was like, "This is a really good story. You should be writing." And like a lot of my teachers lifted me up by telling me to keep on writing.
Yeah, grade 3 is pretty young to decide. I want to be a writer, but I guess you knew what you wanted, and I'm
Yeah.
glad you had that encouragement even at that young age to continue this path. Are there any other hobbies aside from writing that influences your work and your writing?
Um, I do it. Well, I do a lot of reading. I sometimes paint, and I just like being creative in whatever way I can be. And
I think you've
yeah,
you included a couple paintings in of your paintings in your book as well. I
yeah.
thought I would ask. And your recent book is an anthology of 60 Scoop Survivor stories. Can you talk a little bit about the genesis behind that book and how that got started? What did How did that anthology come about?
I initially did like a post on Facebook asking if anybody would be interested in writing their story for uh, anthology that I had wanted to do, and I did a call out on my website, and I got I started getting the reason I wanted to do the anthology was that I had been to like about I think 360 Scoop gatherings in Ottawa, and hearing other people's stories um, reminded me of the resilience that a lot of Indigenous people have, and I wanted to give a platform to other 60 Scoop survivors to tell their story in their own voice.
Um, Sounds like a really good idea to get those stories out there. Uh, Before your anthology came out, I don't think I'd heard of very many anthologies getting people's stories out there from 60 Scoop Survivors. So I think it's really important, and I'm really happy that that anthology is out there. Um, was it difficult to read those Scoop Survivor stories, given your own history? Did you find it like healing to offer space for others survivors?
I definitely found it healing to know that I was given a platform to other survivors. It was difficult to read the stories, but I made sure that I did a lot of self care if I felt particularly triggered by something. So and working with the writers, um, it was it was a really good experience. It was actually a lot better than I thought it would have been, and yeah, so I'm happy with that project.
Nice. Maybe at this point we could I could ask you for another short reading from maybe from the 60 Scoop anthology if you have a copy handy?
Yeah. This one is called A Letter to My Sister. As a 60 scoop survivor, I often learned to misplace my anger and would put it on people in situations that I could better control. I had no control over the actions of my adoptive parents, so I learned to put it on the next closest person to me. Nimison, I love my sister. There's an anger inside that I feel towards you. I have never really been able to put my finger on it. I think the answer is there, but it chooses to hide within my subconscious, just waiting to rear its ugly head. Especially when I feel the littlest of slights from you. This anger, though, is very real. It was there when we were children, and you got all the attention from our adoptive parents, and I was shoved aside and was threatened to keep silent. It was there when the slightest of behavioral infractions was caught, and I took the brunt of the punishment, even though I hadn't done anything. You were considered the angel, and I was the devil incarnate. I remember in grade three, when out of the blue, I was yanked from our grade school and made to go to another grade school 10 mere minutes away from where we lived. I was told it's for your own good, but was it really? We both misbehaved according to their standards, but I was the one who silently took the punishment, just like the flavor of the month. It meant a beating, staying home, and being the dutiful daughter who cleaned the house from top to bottom, and missing a hot dog day at school. Hot dog days at school happened to be one of my favorite days. I don't really know why, just the thought of them now make me feel sick. I remember our adoptive parents making me eat them for a month afterwards, all because I had told you I was upset for missing that day. Hot dog days at school allowed me to experience the joy of having hot dogs and ketchup just like my classmates. It meant not having to stick to the goddamn awful diet of white bread with peanut butter and jelly sliced into four little squares. Sandwiches that were made to look like they were made so lovingly. I knew the anger behind the person who made them. The person who quite blatantly told me at the age of 6, "You're a little bitch." There's an anger inside that I feel towards you. I have felt this anger all my life, but I've kept it as hidden as much as I possibly can. People who don't know my truth and what lurks beneath its surface tell me, "You're lucky to have a sister." They don't understand my silence after those words are said, the tears that fall later after they leave, or the discombobulation I endure afterwards when I'm home all alone trying to make sense of why. Why do I feel such anger towards someone I should have feelings of love for? I wonder if that was our adoptive parents' intention, to drive a wedge between us, two sisters who understood each other and the pain we learned to endure at their hands. No one really understands the anger or the hurt that hides beneath the surface. The anger I can't let go of because I always knew that you were the one that was always wanted, and I was quite blatantly told, "You were never wanted. You were just a part of the package deal."
Yeah, some really difficult memories that you're writing about in this anthology as well. Um, what does your writing practice look like? Do you write every day? Do you write at certain times of the day? Do you need to have like your favorite mug of coffee beside you, or do you have like a certain routine to warm up to get you started, or do you have like a ritual involved, or you just write when you? What's your writing practice look like?
I kind of just write whenever the feeling hits me. Like it I mean, it can hit me at like 3 in the morning, and I'll get up and I'll type something out on my phone or my computer. Um, Sometimes I'll just put it in my journal and then um, tell myself I'm gonna work on it later, but then I never get around to it because I forget. But I don't have a real sense of a writing practice because I just. But I think I should have one because of my projects that I'm working on now. So I need to get into a better routine.
So you don't have routine. You don't have like a certain routine you follow. It's just kind of like a bit more organic, I guess you can call it.
Yeah, it's just here and there, and
Um,
like, yeah.
Um, so when you're writing your memoir stories, memory is like often elusive. And how did you deal with the gaps in your memory or things that were you forgot when you were telling your own history? And in terms of the need for a story arc in the memoir, like how did you remember things that did you do you remember things when you were writing that came back to you?
There was a lot of stuff that came back when I was writing. Um, that's why it took so long to get my memoir out because I started it when I was in Banff, and um, when I had to go through the editing process, I really had to dig deep and rem- remember a lot more than I really wanted to. But I'm glad that that process was done with me, and because it got out a lot more than what I probably initially would have had.
And then yeah, I guess you had to decide what to include and what not to include as well, how much you wanted to share.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, you've also created a really independent, successful life for yourself as a working writer. And in your career, in your writing career, in your career outside of writing, in your education. So I wonder if you could talk about a little bit what about what it's been like to move on from your difficulties with those more difficult past that you've had, to remember it, but also not to let it like control you, and how that your writing has helped you in that process.
Um, I think it goes to a lot of people that were very supportive of me. Um, and that support made me more confident enough to do what I wanted to do. And it's it was there's like a lot of times where I felt like giving up because of the difficulties I went through, but I managed to get through it. It was something that I going back to school was probably one of the best things that I did, and I found a support system at the First Nations House at the University of Toronto, and they became like a family to me while I was there. And even when I was in my masters, I often went there and hung out there and took part in feasts and stuff like that. So it was like a first real connection. I think that helped me a lot. And
Nice. What did you study at UFT?
I did Aboriginal studies, which should be called Indigenous studies. Um, I took language classes, and I did a couples. I did a summer abroad in Sydney, Australia, and then a health course out in Belize. And then when I was doing my master's, I it was a whole bunch of courses. It was just um, a lot of them had to do with
I think it was called.
pardon.
I think it was called Native Studies when I took it. They keep on
Yeah,
changing the names of those programs.
yeah. So I yeah.
What was your master's program?
My master's in education was for the was in social justice, which has been something that I've always advocated for and been a part of. So
So, your memoir is a story of colonial violence and harm caused by institutions, administration of child welfare, government policies, but it's also a story about reclamation of identity and reconnection with your indigenous culture, community, and families. Can you talk a little about what it's been like building a balanced life for yourself and that connection between your culture and community connection and your health and well-being as a First Nation person?
um, I really don't know how to answer that. um,
It's a big question.
yeah. Um, I don't know. I think the thing. I guess directing my anger onto paper is um, a way of challenging the system, I guess, and I and wanting to see a better future for the generations behind me. Um, and I just totally went off topic. So,
Um,
but
it was kind of it's interesting the way you phrase it, like directing your anger at the page like that, as an outlet, I guess. Um,
yeah,
um, to go back to the 60 Scoop anthology, what was the curation process for that book? Because you were dealing with many writers. How did you decide which stories to include? And also because you're dealing with real stories and people's real experiences, I feel like the editing process might have been a little bit more sensitive maybe to their experiences. What was that like? And also just the curation of those stories.
I had I don't know how I really planned how the stories would go until I received them, but I love that it opened with a poem from Tyler Pennock, and then it went from there and ended with somebody saying that they had finally came home or whatever arrived home, and um, the stories in between, like there was like it was really intense. So um, I always told the writers during the writing process, and I mean the editing process, that um, it was very important to me to keep their voices in in their story as much as possible. So um, I tried to like I basically reiterated that every time I did my editing, and I told them um, I would ask them if this is okay for the edit, and they would let me know yes or no. And a couple people pulled out because of because of the fact that their story was going to be out there, and they all of a sudden didn't really feel comfortable with it, and I didn't hold that back against them. I totally understood because it is a difficult thing to do, write your story and get it and have the world see it, or reading community, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
really difficult sometimes to tell stories like that. Um, so I thought maybe you could read like the dedication from your memoir, because I was looking at that and I'm like, okay, that's really powerful dedication.
I'd like to dedicate this book to Nemama Anna Smith, my sisters Marguerite and Alice, my niece Samantha, my newly found family, all my friends and loved ones who have stood by me, and lastly to all 60 Scoop survivors. Please know I'm breaking my silence so that you will know we are not alone. Our voices need to be heard. Miigwech.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful dedication. I thought it just speaks volumes to the work that you've done in getting 60s Scoops stories out there. Um, let's see. Maybe we can also also ask you for another reading. Maybe some. I know because you've done a lot of journalism. You have also written poetry. You're also working on a YA novel. You've also written fiction. So I know you don't stick to just one genre. You've written in many genres. So I wonder if you could also do a reading talking about one of the other genres that you've worked in.
This is a Bawaajigan Dream Medicine. Eva's unraveling began when she learned she could speak with spirits. It's nothing to be afraid of, her Nokomis had once told her. In our Anishinabek culture, it's considered a gift, but that was many years ago. Eva's friends clumped into her apartment. Joe was short, fair haired, and bossy. Kat was petite and sleek, and Aaron was a gracious and bubbly Catholic. Kat carried two eco-friendly bags with Dollarama logos splashed across them. "What do you have there?" Eva asked. "Oh, just chips." Kat spoke with a slight Cantonese accent. She heaved the bags onto Eva's bed as though they weighed a ton. Eva put her hand to her mouth to suppress a giggle. Aaron also carried a couple of bags. "I brought Diet Coke and rum if you want to mix." Joe carried something rectangular in a white plastic bag. She pulled out a box and gingerly put it on the floor. The bag had an Apple Store logo on it. It was a Ouija board. It seemed like something ancient amidst their tech-savvy world. After all, there isn't an app you can use to conjure the dead. Eva was curious about her birth father. He had passed on when she was a child, so if her friends wanted to play Ouija, she'd go along with it. She ignored the voice whispering in her head, "Don't do this, don't do this." The four girls looked at the board and glanced at each other. "Should we do this? We could try to contact lost relatives." Joe swept fingers across a tendril of hair that had escaped from behind her ear. Eva nodded. She wanted to contact her dad. Her friends piled their coats on her bed. Joe flicked a light switch, and they all sat in a circle on the hardwood floor. They could barely see each other in the inky darkness. The only light came from a street lamp, filtering through flimsy curtains. "Cool that we can do this at your place." Kat patted the floor. "Yeah," Aaron whispered. "If I ever brought a Ouija board into my house, my parents would kill me." The other girls still lived with their parents. Eva had lived on her own since she was 17. Orphaned at age 10, she had lived in foster homes for years. Thankfully, she still had contact with her maternal grandmother, Lillian, until her death a few years ago. Though they were the same age, 20, her friends often looked to her for counsel when it came to guys or problems with their parents. Maybe it was because Eva had had a difficult life and they thought of her as wise beyond her years.
Nice. Can you provide some a little bit more context for the fiction story you just read?
I wrote it based on some of the stuff I've been through. But I wanted to present it in fiction because um, felt safer that way, I guess. And talking to spirits or having the ability to talk to spirits, it's not something people really talk about or want to talk about. So I fictionalized it so that it would sound like if it's so it would sound safer.
Um, so I also wonder if you could talk a little bit about moving between those genres, between nonfiction and fiction. Which do you find more challenging? Do you have a favorite genre or a genre that you're most comfortable working in? And what's it like to push your boundaries when you're trying out new forms?
The most challenging genre I find is young adult because it's difficult to write a story and put all that I want to put in it without making it sound too too um, too old for the age group that could be reading the book. And my favorite genre would be like memoir, but it also comes with memoir also comes with a cost at times because it drains you because it emotionally drains you because you're going off of memories that you've suppressed for like years. um and pushing my boundaries, like pushing I've always wanted to do any kind of writing that I can. I even have um an academic paper in a University of Toronto journal, and I've written for healthy debate, and so I kind of dabble in everything, and sometimes it grabs me, and then sometimes it doesn't, and that's when I learn like, okay, I have to step back and decide what I'm gonna do, what I'm gonna work on.
Yeah, how do you decide whether something's oh you have an idea? How do you decide that okay, I'm going to tell this story as a straight nonfiction, or you're going to like fictionalize it, or it might be a painting, or it could be a poem, or maybe an journal article. How do you decide which format the story is going to um, evolve into?
um I guess it just depends on how it comes out, and if I think somebody would be interested in it for freelancing, or whether it's freelancing or submitting. I don't really submit to contests, but um, that's one of my goals is to actually try to enter a contest just to see how I fare. Um, and I've done Facebook posts of little flash fiction stories kind of thing, but I don't, I don't know, have no idea.
You've tried out a few different forms for sure. Um, so, who are some of your mentors, writing mentors, writers that you look up to, um, poets or authors that really inspire your own work and influence your career?
I My biggest mentors have been Lee Miracle, Cherie Demeline, and I really like the style of writing by Michelle Good, and I like Wabgijik Rice and the way he writes.
Nice. Have you found a lot of support from other First Nation authors and writers? Is there like a good support network for writers? Do you think,
Um,
or was it like difficult to find when you were starting out?
when I was starting out, I literally just like pitched. No, I had written an article and I sent it to Anishinabek News, and then they said that if I fixed it up a little bit, then they would publish it, and that basically started my writing career, like my freelance writing career, and then doing articles, covering events. It let me um, be a part of the Indigenous community here in Toronto, and I obviously have friends that are writers, so and they're a good support. Um, but I loved when Cherie Demeline used to do the Indigenous Writers Gathering every year, and we haven't had that for years now. And it would be amazing if we could do something like that here in Toronto again. So
Maybe you should think about starting it up there, Christine. Um, but yeah, I feel like you've definitely found community through writing, and as well as through your education, like through First Nations House. Um, so what was the actual first piece of writing that you had published?
I can't remember to be honest with you. It was some um it was an opinion piece, I think. I can't remember though what it, but it was taken and published, so that was, you know,
An op-ed got your writing career started.
yeah,
Nice. So journalism and nonfiction was your kind of first publication path into the
yeah,
world of writing and storytelling.
yeah.
How long had you been like telling your stories before, like writing, before you actually got anything out there?
Uh, I did writing obviously in high school that I showed my high school English teacher, and he encouraged me to keep writing. And I had things here and there that like I just kept to myself. But then as soon as I left Windsor and came to Toronto, that's when I took a leap and decided that I wanted to do my writing on the side.
Um, so maybe we can ask for another reading from you. Maybe something from your another genre like poetry, or maybe something one of your journalism pieces, perhaps.
Um, Let me see. This is a poem I wrote. Um, I remember. I remember when I first laid my eyes upon you. Something told me you would be the one I would want to spend my time with. the one who would grab my attention like no one else had before. I remember your laughter and how it could make everyone else laugh around you. Your smile melted my heart and made me feel warm inside. I remember the first time we spent the day together, and I didn't want to go home. You told me I could stay over. You weren't shy, you came right out and said, I want to fool around with you. I remember the first time we lay down beside each other in your bed and your hands caressed me. I wanted to scream from the desire you conjured up within me. I remember our first kiss and how it made me melt inside. It made me want more. I never tired of your company. I wanted to be with you always. You made me see a part of me that no one else had before. I remember the last time I saw you. You invited me over for dinner, and I couldn't refuse if it meant spending more time with you. I didn't know that it would be the last time I saw you alive, or that I would never again be able to reach out and feel your arms around me, or have one more kiss planted on my lips. You left this world, and when you did, you took a part of me with you. I miss you more than you will ever know.
It's a really powerful piece. Thank you for sharing. Um, so maybe you could just talk a little bit about what you're working on now, what you're working on next, your different writing projects that you have on the go, or are there any like big dreams you have for future projects that haven't even started yet?
Um, I would love to work on another anthology for that not only includes 60 Scoop Survivors, but other Indigenous um, community members that would explore the topic of what is home. Because a lot of us, well, speaking on, like, a lot of us have had trouble um, trying to come to terms with what home is, especially if you're like off reserve and you live in the city, or you're an adoptee and you're basically living in two worlds, which is like can be really difficult. Um, but I have yet to pitch that to anyone. But that's one thing I wanted to work on or would like to. And I'm working on a YA novel um, about it's called Heading Back to the Res. But that's just a tentative title for now. And I started a poetry manuscript, but I haven't totally done any added anything for like a couple months. So that's like three things there, and then on top of that, I it's been requested that I write educational materials for my memoir and my anthology. So I have to work on that.
So I think you listed five things. There was a home themed anthology that you hope to do in the future. There was your poetry manuscript that you've been working on. There's a YA novel that you've been contracted to write. I think there was the I'm missing two.
Um, oh, my educational materials.
Educational materials. Yeah, you have a lot of projects on the go. I guess the more projects you have, they move a little bit slower. But looking forward to seeing what you come out with next. And is there? I wonder if you could also plug where people can find your work. Is there certain publishers that you can direct people to? Where can people read your stuff?
They can go to kegedoncepress.com. Um, uh, Exile. Or I mean, they could get books from Amazon or from Indigo. Um, my website, which is Christine's Writing and Consulting, and I think,
And the YA novel.
and then
Who's that gonna?
it's coming from James Lorimer, but I haven't like completed it yet. So once that's out, I or done and out, then I will post that on my blog too, or on my website. So
Nice. Well, I will keep an eye out for those. We have a few minutes left. Maybe we could open up to questions. Is there any questions in the chat? Is that an option? No, no, no question. Okay. Anyone in our audience want to ask anything from Christine? No. Okay. Uh, well, maybe we can finish off with another reading then. If you have another one tucked in your back pocket, it's a nice way to end.
um, I had teenage angst just like any other teenager, but the angst I felt inside was something I felt no one around me could understand. It was while I was in my third foster home that the emptiness I felt inside began to fester and grow bigger than me. I couldn't quite explain this emptiness, and it gnawed at me continuously. I often wondered, will this emptiness ever go away, or will it slowly kill me? As a teenager, I lived in a small town called Kingsville, where I stood out, a brown face in a sea of white faces. I had transferred from my second foster home in Windsor to a small town where more than anything I felt alone. The transfer happened in the middle of my grade 8 year. I remember thinking, what a time to transfer. In the small town, there was racism that was not always noticeable to those around me, but I experienced it. The racism was subtle, but it was there. It was there when I was the last one picked for my team sports at school. It was there when no one sat with me at lunchtime, and the only person who would talk with me was my teacher. Because no one in my age group would talk to me, I would hang out with younger students. I found they were less discriminating and more accepting of who I was. I would get teased for that, so at recess I walked with the teacher on yard duty instead of socializing with the other kids my age. I would walk in companionable silence with whatever teacher was on yard duty, and I felt safe. I sought attention from the school principal by telling him I was sick and I needed to go home. He was a short, balding man, but he would put his arm around me, smile, and say, Christine, it's okay, you're okay. But those words couldn't cure a lonely heart or the emptiness I felt. I would start to cry and tell him I can't stay, I want to go home. I'm sure my foster mom at the time didn't know the real reason why I wanted to be at home instead of school. She never asked me why. She just accepted that I wanted to be at home. She would give permission for me to come back home for the day, as long as I promised that I would go back to school the next day. Don't get me wrong here, I excelled at school, but I always knew that I was the different one everywhere I went. I would go to bed at night, and in the deep recesses of my mind, I would ask myself repeatedly, I wonder if my mom is alive. Will I ever find her? What does she look like? Will she want to see me? I kept these questions to myself because I really didn't know who I could talk to about them. The questions nagged at me constantly and heightened my feelings of not knowing who I was, where I would fit in, or if I would ever find the family I longed for so deeply.
Thank you much, Christine, for sharing your stories and sharing your talking about your writing career with us. Once again, yeah, just miigwech for being here and sharing your stuff. Um, I'd like to encourage everyone to purchase a copy or contact 32 Books to order them. These are the stories or the 60 Scoop anthology, or and keep an eye out for Christine's other upcoming work. Thank you all to the staff and volunteers at Word Vancouver for making this event possible. And there's plenty of more events happening. Please check out the complete listings on wordvancouver.ca. Uh, Chimigwach, Christine, Mama P. Guamin.
Miigwech.